So welcome everybody to the National Empowerment Center's webinar, Understanding Resilience and Peer Support. Today, we have presenters Angela Navarro and Nita Chopra, and I will be moderating our webinar today. My name is Joana or Joey Arcangel. A disclaimer that this webinar was developed in part under grant number SM062560 from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The views, policies, and content expressed on this presentation are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of SAMHSA or HHS. We have closed captioning enabled. It's available if you click on the CC or more to view the closed captioning. That might look different if you're on a phone, but I believe you should be able to navigate that through similar options. You can also view the entire transcript of the meeting by clicking on Show Transcript. This webinar will be recorded, and the presentation recording will be posted to the National Empowerment Center website at www.powertoyou.org. You can also subscribe to NC's YouTube video, where you can find this and other similar videos at youtube.com/National Empowerment Center. If you do not wish to be seen on the recording, you're welcome to turn your camera off. If you have any questions at the end of the webinar, we will have that Q&A session. I believe you can use the chat function to make the comments and questions. At some point, we might also be able to unmute you during the time, depending on how many questions we have and how much time we have. And they will be taken in the order that they're received. So feel free to share your question in there to interact with our presenters. And here are our presenters, a little bit about them. I have the pleasure to introduce Angela Navarro, who uses she, her pronouns. She is a parent, youth and peer mentor, crisis counselor, and special advocate for foster youth. She values uplifting others and improving their quality of life. She graduated from California State University of Dominguez Hills, earning her bachelor's in psychology and minor in sociology. Her studies emphasize cognitive psychology and child and adolescent psychology. She's also worked within the Transitional Age Youth program that focus on career and education exploration and financial literacy. Angela is a Community Resiliency Model, or CRIM, certified teacher and certified in mental health first aid. And next we have Nita Chopra, who we will hear from shortly. And she uses she, her, they pronouns. Nita Chopra is a dynamic coach, trainer, and consultant specializing in community mental health and trauma resilience. Her career in advocacy and empowerment stems from her personal experience as an Asian American youth navigating mental health systems and overcoming stigmas. With a background in behavioral health research at UCLA and peer support program management, she brings practical expertise. Nita currently serves as a co-chair for Long Beach Health Neighborhoods and as a voting member for the SALT 8 leadership team, both for the LA County Department of Mental Health. All right, Nita, take it away.
Thanks so much, Joey. And thank you everyone for being here with us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining from. So we're going to take it over to the next slide. I have a couple questions that I'm going to pose to you folks. If I invite you to respond in the chat, as Joey mentioned, we'll open up a Q&A at the end today. So first, I want to pose the question to everyone. What does peer support mean to you? And as I mentioned, please, I invite you to share with us what it means to you in the chat. We just want to get, get a feel from the audience what peer support has done for you in your lives or what it means to you in your life. Great. We have supporting others through lived experience, listening, relating to one another, mutual. I'm seeing mutual a few times, mutual aid, mutual understanding. Someone is posting about their experience as being a veteran and having a sounding board as an identity for veterans. Let's see. And we have some peer support specialists joining us. Great. Thank you. Welcome. To walk alongside someone, sharing hope, strength, an accountability partner, even. Understanding, service with compassion and transparency. That's great. Thank you. Being a cheerleader and being that person to provide a safe space to share, relating to pain and listening in a safe space. Yes, so important. Walking beside someone as a survivor and mentoring. Yeah, these are all great responses. Thank you so much for chiming in this morning and holding space. Yeah, and showing us how peer resiliency, how you show up for peer support, excuse me, and how peer support shows up in your life. So there's some great responses in the chat. I really encourage folks to invite you to take a look at the chat and see what some of the other responses are. We have so many coming through. It's a great response. Yeah, and then I have been seeing in the chat that some folks are saying they're having difficulty hearing the audio. If you are having difficulty with your audio, it may help to exit and then rejoin using the link that you got through the registration. That usually clears up some audio for me sometimes, but great. And thanks to those letting us know that you can hear us. All right, so we've gotten peer support down. Now I'm going to go over, thank you, Joey, to our next question of what does resilience mean to you? So again, I invite you to respond in the chat for what does resilience mean to you personally or in your professional space, in your lives. Enduring challenges, great. Bouncing back from difficult circumstances, yep. Finding hope. Being able to move through the roller coaster of life and recovery. Yeah, and we'll definitely get into a little bit of how resilience can be that roller coaster, right? Enduring challenges, a badge of courage, the ability to adapt and overcome. Awesome. Learning to thrive in a process of pain and crisis. Yeah, resiliency shows up in a lot of ways, right? Remaining ready to move ahead at any time, bouncing back with stronger tools. I like that. And we're going to be talking about some of those tools in a little bit here. Yep, getting up, bouncing back. I'm seeing a lot of that, getting up, bouncing back. Nice. All right. So again, I invite y'all to take a look at the chat, these great responses that are coming through. And thank you so much to those who are, putting their responses in. So throughout our session, our time with y'all here today, we're going to get into a bit about what peer support and resilience mean to us and through the work that the three of us, Joey, Angela, and I have done together. But first, I'm going to hand it off to Angela right now to get a little bit more into what resilience is through the Community Resilience Model, or Resiliency Model, excuse me, CREM, which is a tool we've all used together in our peer support work. So Angela, please take it away.
Thank you, Nita. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so I'd like to introduce the Community Resilience Model. This model was created by Elaine Miller-Karas and the Trauma Resource Institute. Here on the slide, you can see their core values include service, social justice, dignity, respect, and worth of every person, family, and community. The community resilience model is a biological model, and that teaches us how to pay attention to the sensations within our body. So rather than what we're used to, right, which is talking about emotions we're experiencing, and like Nita had mentioned and someone in the chat, we can experience a lot of sensations throughout the day. We could start maybe triggered or activated by our alarm. Maybe we woke up late, or maybe we had that cup of coffee, and go through our day lower and upper and lower and upper. And maybe at the end of the day, we're in our low zone, experiencing sadness, maybe exhaustion. So we talked earlier too about resiliency, but CRIM, Community Resilience Model, their definition of resiliency includes cultivating our well-being, embracing our individual and collective assets and strengths, being solution-focused about life's challenges, being compassionate, optimistic, and acknowledging individual and collective suffering with kindness, accomplishing all of this as we live our lives. Another definition from the Creative CRIM is resiliency is an individual's ability to identify and use individual and collective strengths in living fully in the present moment, and to thrive while managing the activities of daily living. So before we move on to the next slide, I want to ask you guys an important question. In the chat, if you could put yes or no, who has a nervous system? Okay, cool. I was about to say, if I'm the only one, we're going to have some problems. So that's something that we all have in common, right? Yes. Some of us are really proud to have a nervous system. Okay. So that's something that we all have in common. And with CRIM, we notice that sensations come and go with our nervous system. And with CRIM, we can even teach toddlers how to regulate their nervous system. And the community model talks about 3 zones. We have the high zone, where we might experience, like I mentioned earlier, irritability, feelings of anger, right? The low zone, which is feelings of sadness, maybe exhaustion, and the okay zone. This is where we're able to be our best self in the face of life stressors. But does that mean that we have to be an either or? No, it means that we can fluctuate through all of it, but be resilient through it all. So we learn through CRIM skills. They have a total of 3, but today we're only going to go over 1. We learn through those skills how to not get stuck in either of those. So we'll see in a couple of slides one of the skills. Before we do that though, there's a free app that the Trauma Resource Institute lets the community have. It's totally free for iPhone and Android. Within the app, you can go to the App Store or Google Play and type in iChill. In the app, you'll see here like a little screenshot about the different tabs you'll have. You'll have access to all of the skills. You'll have a guided tutorial of how to practice the skills in the moment. In addition, you'll have more about resources in the community as well. Thank you, Joey. We can go to our tracking. Perfect. All right. So as I mentioned before, there's a total of 3, but today we're going to go over 1, which is tracking. So as we mentioned earlier, the community resilience model is a biological model. And when we think of tracking, we can translate that to paying attention, right? Noticing. So we notice the sensations that are happening within our body at the present moment. So to better understand this, let's think about a garden. This garden has both flowers and weeds and some fruits, right? Some oranges and apples. So we have flowers, fruits, and weeds. In the chat, what would happen if we were to only water the weeds, but not the flowers and fruits? Okay, the flowers and fruits would die. It would die. a weed. Okay. Right. So the weeds would grow rather than the flowers and fruits. So the moral of this is that with tracking, i.e. paying attention, we are noticing the weeds. They could be there, but with tracking, we can notice that, but we're going to pay attention to the well-being, those flowers and fruits. We're going to water that so they grow. Again, that it's okay to have that ebb and flow, but we're going to pay attention to what we want to grow. So tracking as a skill is important, but how can it be beneficial in our daily lives? The more we practice something, roots not on thriving, weeds overtaking. Right. So the weeds, maybe those unpleasant sensations could be overwhelming. We could start noticing more of that rather than what's maybe helpful, what's going to help us calm down or maybe have joy and thrive. Thank you, guys. So how can it be helpful and beneficial in everyday life? So in the face of stressors, when we practice a skill, we can become better at it. So we think of like tuning and pruning, right? The more we practice something, the more our brain and our body wants it to be automatic so we can face our challenges with more resilience. So I know you guys are all super excited to practice tracking. I'm not sure if we could put our cameras on, but if not, it's okay. If it's okay with the audience, you can have your cameras off. I'd invite you guys to practice this tracking skill with me. Give it a couple of seconds. If there's anybody that doesn't feel comfortable or would like to, no worries at all. I'd invite you to take both of your hands, right, and rub them together really, really fast. Really, 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 really fast. Now pull them apart. In the chat, let me know what sensations you're feeling within your hands. And with that, is it pleasant, warmth, or unpleasant, or is it neutral? Key, tingling, warmth, tingling, tingling. A little unpleasant, okay. Warmth, neutral, perfect. I'm feeling groovy, okay. Chafing, okay, perfect, amazing. All of that is great. And that's tracking. That's something you can do everywhere, and your body is communicating to you. Just as simple as that. It could take a few minutes, it could take 30 seconds. Your body is going to communicate to you the sensations that are going in your body, and you can invite that conversation back. What are the sensations that I'm noticing, right? Are they pleasant, not pleasant, or neutral? If they're not pleasant, maybe noticing the sensations in your body that are. Maybe guide your attention somewhere that feels more neutral to you. So that's tracking. It's all also a grounding. Yes, yep, that's also a grounding method. So that is tracking. And again, if you wanted to know more skills or more about the Community Resilience Model, download the app also. But yeah, thank you so much. I'll hand it. Oh, yes. So the iChill app. There you go. And it's free. So check it out, if anything. And then I'll hand it over to Joey.
Thank you so much, Angela and Nita and everyone who's participating, engaging. Again, as Angela mentioned, this is a choice. Being trauma informed, we recognize that being in our bodies, it can bring up different things for people. It can even spark, unpleasant or painful memories or sensations. So the invitation, that's why it's an invitation. Learning sensory language can be distressing, but it can also be really useful. And it's up to the individual to decide, and discern when this could be beneficial for them, whether they're feeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations. I know I've used this app even in emotional CPR trainings, if you're familiar with that through NEC. I've used this skill on the app. They have a grounding that you can walk people through, and it's also available in Spanish. So I love that. I've been passing on this resource. So thank you so much, Angela, um, again, for teaching us about CRIM and tracking. I'm going to stop sharing at this point because we want to invite Nita back. We'll be having a discussion with them to learn more about their perspective on peer support and resiliency. We're going to pin Nita and Angela. And my first question to you is, how did you get started in mental health work?
Sorry about that. Thank you so much to Judine for repinning me. I appreciate it. And thank you, Angela and Joey, for that great, run through on tracking and CRM. As I said earlier, it was a great tool for us in the peer support work we did together. And thanks for the question, Joey. So as you saw a little bit through my bio, how I got started in the mental health sphere sector was through my own personal experience, growing up. I am first generation, born here in America. My parents were from India, and growing up as an Indian American child, going through her own mental health struggles in a stigmatized, in a culture where it is stigmatized, and it continues to be, it was very confusing and challenging trying to navigate my own care and resources in the community when the internet was a lot smaller back then. Resources weren't as readily available, I feel like, as they are now, where we have such a highlight on behavioral health, mental health services, right? So I had gone through my own experiences as a youth trying to navigate that. And then when I got to college, I thought like, okay, my navigating of it is all done. Like I've done that work, like I am set in my wellness. And then of course, that wasn't the case, because mental health wellness, it's a cycle, it's a journey. You can be great at one point and then you feel not so great, just like how Angela was talking about with CRM and tracking. It's a roller coaster, right, at times. So in college, I really went through a big bout of mental health challenges, again with depression, anxiety, that had been tied to undiagnosed ADHD, and also PTSD from experiences that I had had in my childhood now catching up with me. So having to re-navigate these systems as, a student in college, and trying to also navigate college as a first generation American. Like this is a completely new system to my family. I'm the first one going to college, from my siblings. So it was through those experiences that I realized I really wanted to continue promoting mental health resources, education in communities. I also went to school at UC Merced in the Central Valley, where you see a lot of, you know, differences, a lot of disparities through the socioeconomic levels of people who live there in the communities, and how health resources, health education was really needed. So through my time there, through my own personal experience, it really pushed me into furthering, my mental health career. I did get into health research for a bit at UCLA, and I realized when I was going through my time in health research that it wasn't the field for me. At least in my experience, I found that I wanted to make more I wanted to have more connection with people. In research, through my experience, it was very, to get the best results, everything has to be done the same. You can't have anything be different. So everyone, they come in, they receive their services for whatever study it is we're doing, and then they leave. And that's the amount of communication or the amount of, resources that we provide them, care that we provide them until they're in for their next appointment. And so I really felt that I want to make sure that people are staying connected, people are getting the resources they need, that I'm not leaving the care at the door when they leave. So I had left the research sphere and got back into doing direct services with folks through nonprofits and social service programs. And, through a mental health nonprofit, that's where we all met and started doing our peer work together, which was really an amazing experience. And yeah, it's just furthered my own path and in peer support. I didn't really realize what peer support was until, working at my last mental health nonprofit, and really realizing that I am a peer through the lived experience that I've had, and how I had seen that before as something I was overcoming. I was constantly overcoming, these things that have happened to me, these things that are attached to me, my mental health. But instead, it's not, that it's a tool, it's a skill set that I'm able to use to connect with people and let folks know that, hey, like I've been through this. I hear you might be going through this, and let's figure out some ways together that, we can work towards better mental health for you, for the community. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nita. Um, I have known you for a few years now, and you were actually my supervisor in that peer program. And recognizing that a lot of people who enter the field of mental health and support in general, um, it's, they have their own reasons. And for you to realize that you are a peer, because not all peer programs are trained traditionally through learning about the peer movement and things like that. So what I love about what you're sharing is that journey, that individual and collective learning and growing together, and feeling empowered even within our communities. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to ask Angela the same question.
Thank you, Nita, first of all, for your vulnerability and kind of like sharing, how you got to where you are. I really appreciate that. I could relate a lot, a lot to, navigating through it all, because that's not it. You're also trying to manage and deal with life as it's happening, right? So there's a lot of internal experiences, right? So for me, what really got me to know like my purpose in life, being in the mental health field, was really one person, right? One person with the experience of my upbringing, right? So my upbringing, I grew up in the foster care system. I aged out of it, as well as like losing both my parents at a young age. So I faced trauma at a really, really young age. And I didn't necessarily know exactly what that was until probably like my early 20s. So once I began to like process exactly how different my life was from my peers, I knew that I had not only trauma, but I had a gift. I had a gift from being handed these glasses, having a different perspective in life. When I heard someone talk, I wasn't just hearing their words, I was feeling it. I wondered, what happened to you? I wondered, like, how can I help you? And a lot of my peers growing up, they weren't like that. And I thought growing up, maybe there was something different about me, but I thought about it in a negative way. Like, oh, why am I like this? Why do I dig so deep into things? But growing up, I really embraced that, right? So, and one thing I love about peer support and mental health is that like we're not doing it for people, we're doing it with people. And I think I saw someone earlier in the chat talking about walking with people, like being like a small part of their journey. It's because it's their journey, right? We're just walking with them. We might have that shared experience, but we're just there supporting them, right? And we might have that guidance there, but mental health and peer support really does mean a lot to me because I think that without it, I wouldn't be here, right? And I think that how Nita was saying, navigating through it is all different experiences. And I think that peer support is such a significant part about self-empowerment too. Because I think growing up, we can often be told what to do, where to go, who to talk to, where to get these resources. But with peers, we're almost meeting each other where we're at. So getting into the mental health field was a lot of my upbringing, but also finding my purpose in that out of this trauma, out of my experiences, I have something to offer the world and my peers. So thank you, Joey. That was a great question.
Thank you, Angela, for your vulnerability and for all the gifts you share with the world, and now you're sharing with us. I've also known you for a couple of years now, getting to work together in a team, and I can share that anytime Angela's ever worked with, we call them members or somebody through our program, she just, you can tell how much she cares, and also Nita, guiding our questions with um, not just how can we best support this person, but really getting to know them as people and what they also have to teach us, to share with us. And I love that you shared that, Angela, that we're walking alongside, not doing for. Thank you both again. And my next question, if you're willing to share with us, would you be able to talk about a time where your resilience was tested?
Yeah, definitely. It's, I had mentioned through my mental health journey, resilience was tested a lot through those times. But I can talk about something, more recently. It like, we all went through the pandemic together. That was, something that we all had to be resilient together through, right? For myself, I'm going to talk about my own experience, having gone through the pandemic through my lens. So at the beginning of the pandemic, the shutdowns happened. And I lost my dad like right at, the beginning there. And it wasn't due to COVID, but, still a health issue. And I think it was like March 23rd, 22nd, we had the shutdowns here in California. And the 26th was his birthday. And I had called him, to wish him a happy birthday. He had suffered, a few years prior, like some strokes. So he always had like low energy, things like that. So I called him, we talked for maybe like a minute because he was tired. And a few days later, unfortunately, he had another massive stroke, and they put him under to, get to the blood clot. And unfortunately, he never came out of the coma that was medically induced. So through that time, at the beginning of, this global epidemic that was going on, personally, like I was going through this experience of like, okay, how do I keep it together? What is work looking like? Even like what is the world going to look like? And so trying to find resilience through that, I had to, go from LA where I live to Las Vegas, where my dad and my family was living and be there with them while navigating stuff online. And then, you know, dealing with the loss of him, like after a couple months of, you know, being in a coma, and then navigating like what work is looking like, having to still carry those things. And then a few weeks after, you know, having done like the funeral services for my dad, I ended up getting a promotion at work. And it wasn't one that I had applied for, it was one that was put on to me. And, you know, me being a go-getter, I was like, yeah, you know, like I'm excited for this. Let me do this. And it happened to be for the peer support team that we all worked for. And, you know, I was up for the challenge, but I had also only taken a week of bereavement, you know, for everything that was going on. But I was like, yes, you know, it's something for me to focus my efforts on. Like, let me push through this. And it was a very heavy experience. Now, having had, you know, we done the ceremony for my dad, and a few weeks later, I'm getting promoted into a manager position for the first time. And then, you know, having to help carry the team. We're all fully remote now. None of us have ever been fully remote. This is the first time. We're all like, we brought in new staff. We're carrying this team together. And so having to navigate, what is this program going to look like? What is the future of this team going to look like? While also navigating my emotions through everything. I really had to tune into like my own resiliency. And I think a big part of that was, you know, staying connected with the team, really talking about like what we were all experiencing at that time, because we couldn't physically be together. We couldn't, you know, once we were able to start physically being together, we would try to hold potlucks and things like that where we could, you know, come together and connect. But really trying to create that virtual connection was really important to me, because that helped me stay resilient. Helping to, or like, while I'm sharing what I'm going through, also hearing what the rest of my team is going through and relating with them through that. And coincidentally, I didn't think of this till just now. I actually got my CREM, Community Resiliency Model certification later, like a few months after that, at the end of that year, and hearing everyone's stories, you know, about what they were going through at that time as well. You know, from, I think we did the training in like November, so March to November, that first year of the pandemic, hearing everyone's stories about what they've been through and seeing their resilience, that really just, it was so impactful. So I highly recommend, you know, if anyone is curious about the community's resiliency model, I really do highly recommend it. And it really helps you get more in touch with your highs and lows. And, you know, when am I being knocked out of my zone, and really identifying with you. How when you might feel that like nervousness or you're in your high, like I do sometimes, like how to stay with yourself, navigate what you're feeling, navigate what others may be feeling too, and use that to get back into your zone. I don't know if that was enough into the resiliency aspect as folks may have wanted, but if not, save it for the Q&A at the end. But I'll pass it off to Angela.
Thanks, Nita. You know, again, just this is Joey, and just again, so sorry for your loss. And to later, after the fact, you know, working together, just realizing how much you've had on your shoulders, you know, at that time even means a lot more, because you did show up in our team meetings for the community, um, and fully supporting people and navigating what they're dealing with, and how to and engaging them and figuring out what would help them stay resilient. So again, thank you for sharing, and we'll pass it along to Angela. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nita. I also worked with Nita recently, and I did not know any of this. I did not know like all of the weight that you were holding on your shoulders, and the way that you showed up, not just for your fellow coworkers, but for the members that we all individually had, my oh my, that was a lot of resilience, girl. So I appreciate that. And that definitely, knowing that as you were talking, like Joey said, I appreciated even more how you were able to show up for us and give us the space that we needed to as coworkers. And something that kept that through the nonprofit that we both worked for, there was an experience that was had about like losing funding. And while working with Nita, she softened that news about losing funding so elegantly and gentle that it made me even appreciate that the leadership that she had. And personally, my experience was very new. It was the first time that I ever experienced, knowing that, okay, within a couple months, we're going to lose our jobs and it has nothing to do with you. And I didn't know how to take that, but I remember coming home telling my family like, oh, what was happening, and the way that they took it, it was like almost like, okay, yeah, of course, that's unfortunate news. But for me, it was like, okay, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do? And the first time it was definitely like a hit in the stomach, but I knew that I have to be flexible, right? Like, because not all things in life, in my mind, are certain. They're not all constant. And I think that's something that has not only kept me resilient, but also been something that has carried me through life, through my personal and professional barriers and challenges. And keeping that mindset has gotten me through the second round of losing funding for the same job. And because it did happen again. And this time we were told within a few weeks in advance. And I remember the Friday before, I had took the day off, so I had the weekend. And the Monday I had came back, I was all refreshed because I took that extra day off for my mental health. I was like, okay, I need a break. And that was me practicing self-care because I could go to work, I could power through, but I knew that the sensations that I was feeling a lot of tightness in my chest. I was feeling heat in my body a lot more than I wanted. And I was like, okay, what can I do to help me show up better for myself and for my members? So I allowed myself to take that day off. Monday, I came back and I turned on my work phone and bing, 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 bing. I'm getting all these messages and they're not nice. They're like, I'm so sorry. Are you guys okay? And all these things. And I'm like, what did I miss? I came back with the news that I'm going to lose my job in a couple weeks. And that's something I didn't prepare for. I couldn't prepare for. There's no way I could have known that. So receiving that, it felt like like an elephant stepped on my chest because what if, how, all those questions came into my mind and none of them had answers to them. And I remember sitting there at my desk knowing that I wasn't going to have answers for a while. And I had to be okay with that. And not only did I have to be okay with that, I had to accept that I still had to work. I still had to show up for my members because they came to the organization because they needed help. And And I was committed to that. I was fulfilled knowing that I'm a ride to the end, right? I'm gonna show up because we're in the middle of this, right? We're in the middle of I'm helping this person do this. We're creating this goal plan. We're putting these resources in place. But at the end of the day, those drives home, the drive home, man, it was very anxiety filled. I couldn't even feel me driving. I couldn't hear the sounds of the car zooming by, the wind, the radio, because I was so in my head. And over time, I was like, okay, it's okay to feel like this. It's okay. This is normal. This is a part of being human, right? We're gonna be tested. Our resilience is gonna be tested. But every obstacle, the obstacle can be the way, right? So I knew that although this is challenging, this is something that I'm gonna come out of because I have before, right? And right, this is normal, yes. So, and that's something that I also appreciated with the community resilience model is that it wasn't the you have to be happy all the time, you have to be strong all the time, wear that smile on your face. It's experiencing it, embracing it, and allowing yourself to be human because we have those sensations, those feelings for a reason. So, my resilience was definitely tested during the time losing funding. And I'm also grateful because here I am. I'm smiling, I'm happy, and I survived. Yeah, I survived it. And I could say today that I have a new layer, a new callus to me that makes me stronger, makes me know that I have another notch on my belt. Like I've been through that, and I could also share my experiences with others. So, yeah, thank you, Joey.
Thank you both. And Angela, why? I mean, wow, I felt deeply and just knowing you as well, the way you show up. And I know that you constantly motivated the team to continually show up for um, not just our members, but for each other as well, because doing that work together, despite, facing that we were losing funding and not sure what our next steps were, that was really, really hard to navigate. And naming our sensations and having a tool that we could choose as well to use to pay attention to what's going on within us. Um, Knowing the sensations of distress and well-being helped us, I think, as you mentioned, navigate that individually and together. My next question, you both kind of answered it already a little bit, but if you want to go even more in depth, feel free to do so. What keeps you resilient and what helps you bump back into your resilient zone?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna kind of touch on something Angela had said, in her last response, and I put it in the chat, but that reminding myself that this is normal. Like, and she had said that it's a lot of times going through, my own experiences and having, anxiety and ADHD, all those things, it can feel very othering. I feel very like caught up in my head, and I create this narrative for myself that I am going through this. No one else knows what I'm going through, and I have to carry this burden myself. I have throughout my life struggled to ask for help. It's something to this day that I have to remind myself to do, that it's okay to ask for help, that it's okay. This is normal. Other people are also going through this. So reminding myself that this is a human experience, like Angela was saying, really does help. Obviously, we hear another part of keeping yourself well is self-care. And that's totally a blanket term now. Like it can mean so many things. And yes, self-care is very important. There are multiple facets to self-care, though. I think I've read something that it was like there are 6 or 7, different things that they say, like, pour into yourself. So there are like 7 ways you should pour into yourself, like physical, mental, emotional, so I think just making sure to find, well, let me speak for myself. What I found works for me recently, I've gotten into doing salsa dancing. I used to like doing that. Yes, yes. I used to do that when I was, in college a little bit. And I am a little bit of a larger woman, and I always got self-conscious about going into dance spaces or spaces in which, like, it's usually that a male partner will come and ask you to dance. And I had to remind myself that, hey, like, I can go ask people to dance. Hey, it doesn't matter what I look like. Like, as long as I want to dance, like, I'm going to go do this. And it's been really great. It's been fun. I challenged myself to do it. And I put myself out there, even with all the anxiety and the baggage I was carrying into it. And I met some great friends through it. And now we motivate each other to go out and dance. So we try to get together once a week and do that. Yes, exactly. Dance like nobody is watching. And yeah, and there is that extra load to carry when you are a woman of color. I do agree. And reminding myself that I'm not alone in that, though, that other people are probably thinking these same things. And having those 2 friends that I met through dance, hearing that none of us look alike. We all look very different. We're all different shapes, colors, sizes. But to hear that we're all having these same, anxieties about going into this space and having fun, like, it really helps bring us together and push through to do it. And back to self-care, like, I also wanted to mention that, a lot of times self-care can be weaponized against folks too, in the sense that it's like, oh, like, you should be doing your own self-care. That's on you to figure out your own resiliency or your own, well-being. And yes, and like, self-care is important. And it's also important past the individual, for organizations, for teams, supervisors, for other people, like family, to also think about your self-care. It's up to us to put our boundaries and know what's important to us in terms of self-care, but it's also important for others to recognize that as well. So we're not taking on, as individuals, all of the baggage, all of the load of everything. Because I've even had it, I've gone to an interview at a place before where I had posed the question of, what, burnout is a huge issue in caring fields, social services, mental health, even government work, caregivers, medical professionals. So a big question I have when I go into interviews is, what do you do as an organization to help prevent burnout for employees? And it was pushed back to me as, well, that's important for the individual to figure out for themselves, which is, in a way, weaponizing self-care. That is an example of an organization saying, it's not on us, it's on you to figure that out. But this is a reminder to folks that it's not all on you. Yes, it's important for you to know your limits, what your joys and your dislikes and your boundaries, things like that. But it's also important for others, organizations, family, community, to take that into consideration. So I just wanted to put that out as a reminder. And I love folks, sharing in the chat their own self-care. I invite folks to, put it in the chat. And thank you, everyone, for your, warm and amazing responses, as Angela and I have been, sharing our experiences here. And we'd love to hear more from you in the chat or even at the end for the Q&A. But yeah, I'll hand it off to you, Angela.
Yes. Man, I relate a lot to what you were sharing, Nita. And I think what helps keep me resilient, I'll touch on something I mentioned in my previous response to the last question, which is allowing things to be, right? So less resistance and more flexibility. And I think that that invites more resilience, in my opinion, because, like I said earlier, I've experienced a lot of things where I could plan for things to go a certain way. I could plan for conversations to go a certain way, for people's opinions to be something I expect. But if I go in towards the day allowing myself to show up as myself, but experiencing the reality as it is, then I could see it for what it is, right? So, but it's not always like that, right? So there's days where I may try my best, but it's not the day. It's just, no matter what I'm doing, I'm bumped out of my resilience zone. I'm really anxious. I'm feeling agitated and irritable. And I remember before I did the community resilience model, I never noticed exactly when I would be bumped out of my resilience zone. It would be after the fact. It would be when I couldn't show up for work. It would be when I couldn't be there for my son. It would be when I was like, oh, did I just say that? What's wrong with me? Like, why did I just say that? I wasn't being myself, right? That's when I would notice. But with cram, I noticed there was a window. Like, oh, there's signs that happen. There's sensations that happen that your body's communicating to you that, oh, hey, maybe you could do something right now to take care of yourself. And I saw someone in the chat saying something about filling your own cup. And that's something that I continue to try to practice. And I say try to practice because it's an uncomfortable thing for me. I've learned recently that I have this mentality that if I can, I should. If I can do that for you, I should do it. If I can put more on my plate, I should do it. And I think that not only it's something that I noticed, but I think it's something that was brought on to me from people around me because I would constantly show up for people and they expected it. And I think that because I can take a lot of things on the chin, that people might have took advantage of that. But it was so hard for me because it's such a huge part of me is showing up for people. Because again, me growing up, I didn't have that. So everything that I was going through, there wasn't a lot of people in my corner. I had to show up for myself. So growing up, I didn't want people to experience that feeling of who can I run to? Who can I talk to? I wanted to be that for them. But that made me burn out personally. And I think another layer to that would be that no one saw that I needed something because I always provided solutions and support for other people. No one like, oh, where is she at? Is she okay? Like I was always okay. Um, so I never realized that there's a space between burnout and the signs my body was telling me. And what I didn't notice is that I would lock myself in the bathroom and flip through pictures of my son. I didn't know that I was doing that. And I would just like, it was automatic. I would just turn on my phone, click on the Photos app, and just see him smiling and like click little videos of him laughing. And like, if y'all heard his laugh, I'm sure all y'all will put it as a ringtone. It would brighten everyone's day up. And it did for me. But I didn't know I was doing that. And then when I had the training for the community resilience model, they asked, what is something or someone that brings you joy? And immediately I thought of him. It was an image of him in my head. And they asked me, like, oh, have you ever thought about creating a photo album of just him, of pictures of him? And I was like, that's a good idea. And then after that thought, it was, I already do that. I flip through pictures of him in my head, I mean, in my phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's my resource. That's what brings me joy. So that helps keep me resilient, but also bumps me back because I know that at the end of the day, he's looking at me, he's seeing how I respond. So I can't show up not being fully transparent. Like, hey, mommy's feeling a little anxious right now, feeling heat in my arms, my hands are tingling. I'm gonna go practice some self-care. I'm gonna do some deep breathing, and I think that goes a long way um, for both of us. And something I learned too is that mental health, like taking care of your mental health, it can be contagious. So if I show up in spaces where I advocate for myself, I be fully transparent, it may encourage the next person to do the same. And I've actually seen that in a couple spaces where at the end, someone would come up and say, wow, I really liked how you said that. I don't think I would have said that. And I think that that inspires me, but also keeps me hopeful about building my own resilience and having resilience be a conversation, and it's not about how much more you can take. It's just about in the face of life stressors, how do you show up for yourself? How do you take care of yourself so you can continue to show up? So that's my answer. Thank you, Joey.
Wow,
Yeah,
thank you both.
Joey, I just wanted
Go ahead,
to point out something that someone shared in the chat. Do we have a minute for that?
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead, Nita.
Thanks. So someone had put a very valid, strong point in the chat that sadly that there is privilege in self-care. And thanks to Kimberly for posting that because yes, 100%. Angela and I, sit from our perspectives and our viewpoints. Not everyone's going to be able to relate to, our backgrounds and perspectives. And not everyone is going to be able to do the self-care that we do because I come from a standpoint of, I don't have children. I am single. So I'm able to go out and do those things. I have the ability to do that self-care for myself, but self-care looks different for people in different countries, different socioeconomic levels, different cultures. And so really finding something that, like how Angela was saying, looking at pictures of her son on her phone, that is something that she was able to find time for to connect and have that self-care for that moment for herself. So really finding what is accessible to you, what speaks to you as an individual, and holding that, for yourself, like she had highlighted. So I just wanted to, highlight what Kimberly had said in the chat that yes, there is that privilege when it does come to self-care, because that is a very important point to make. So thank you for highlighting that in the chat for us. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you so much, Anita. And that is great to highlight. Just reflecting back on everything you two have shared thus far, which actually leads me to the next question. But before I get there, yeah, you being a supervisor to multiple people, some having, different backgrounds and different dynamics as far as family and responsibilities, and recognizing that, we talk about diversity and equity and inclusion. What does that look like? And how do we support the resiliency of the people navigating, those different facets of their lives? Angela, I love that you said it's a conversation because it's not a one size fits all, even in peer support, with the different trainings being provided, with different duties one might have, what communities we're serving, being aware of that. And as Kimberly also said in the chat, Kim, as people of color, women, different backgrounds, abilities, Gail mentioned disabilities, it's an extra layer you know, of navigation. I am also trained in crim, and when I sit in meetings, sometimes, you know, different um, venues, I might notice what happens when I face a microaggression. I could be the only person of color in a meeting, or the only voice that doesn't feel invited to share as much. I notice it a lot more, and I'm able to have that conversation within myself. And through the work I do with others, connect with them. And how do we create more inclusive spaces so that LGBT, you know, communities, you know, women, people of color, they feel they're better at being resilient because they don't have to face as much of the barriers, face as much of the microaggressions, just highlighting that the allyship, the support can definitely uh, uplift the resiliency. And that, again, it's a conversation within ourselves and within our teams, within our communities. So thank you too for really powerful and thoughtful reflections. With that, again, we're going to open it up for questions after this. My last question is, what would you say would help create a supportive, more resilient environment at work? And for Nita, I want to pose, you know, being a first-time supervisor, you know, oftentimes people just, it's their first time without having this thought about what would keep me resilient while I'm in this role.
Yeah, you know, I had discussed earlier how moving up, getting promoted into that position, that was like the first time of being a supervisor for me, or a manager, you know, program manager. And I had supervised like smaller, you know, teams and stuff before, volunteer stuff, but this was totally different. And I think the severity of which, at the level of which people were seeking our services was a lot greater too, like the conditions with which people were coming into our program, right? So it was really important for me to be intentional about how I showed up, because it really kind of had an effect on how we show up for members, which is what we call, you know, clients through our program, and how we showed up for each other as like staff, and also like a continuous frame of mind that I bring into spaces, especially when I'm kind of in the position of supervisor power, you know, over the rest of the team, like power, whatever, is that I'm not the end all be all. I may be the one with the manager in my title, but that doesn't mean I'm always going to have the best ideas. Like there may be, I always make it a point to be very intentional about the types of people that we bring into the space, in terms of staff, making it a diverse team, making sure that people, you know, bring their own backgrounds, their own experiences. It's a disservice to the program. It's a disservice to the members if we have everyone on the team with the exact same experience, with the exact same, you know, schooling and background. Our team consisted of, you know, non-college graduates, college graduates, you know, women, men, folks who identified within the queer community. Like we wanted to make sure that there, and tons of lived experience from different facets, because we wanted, or I wanted to make sure that we had the voices to be able to support the members who are coming through our program, and also the skill set, the ideas, the visions that I don't have, you know, but all of you held as really key individuals in the program, and you can all provide that viewpoint when we're working with members. So let's say that Angela had a member, which Angela was always amazing with her members, but let's say Angela had a member that she felt like she wasn't able to fully make a connection or fully understand the viewpoint that they were having, because it's something that she hasn't experienced herself, or, you know, she's now experiencing this for the first time or hearing someone talking about this experience for the first time. So being able to have multiple viewpoints, multiple, backgrounds at the table, we can discuss it as a team. How can we support each other through this? Hey, maybe Angela, you take Joey to your next session. So the three of you can create, some more conversation together. And then, we'll see what's best past that meeting. And I think it also added that layer of us being able to have more vulnerability with each other, which in today's work landscape, you're hearing more about how friendships, relationships like at work are not as important to younger generations now, especially with such a high like remote work environment, which I'm not saying remote work shouldn't be a thing. I think it's great. It really is supportive to a lot of people in the lives that they live. But it's for our team's functionality and growth and perseverance, it was really important for us to have that vulnerability together and that connection virtually or in person, wherever we were able to get it. But it wasn't just me bringing it to the table. It was all of you picking it up and, receiving it and being open to it. So really trying to create a culture of, it's not just me creating like what the program is going to look like in the rules. It's all of us. We all have a voice at this table. We all have valid opinions, and that's how it's going to be. And people feel like they have a purpose. People feel like they have a voice. And that allows our members to feel empowered too, because our team feels empowered. So yeah, that's my approach for, managing the team. Yeah. And someone said, all of us or none of us. And that helps stop the stigma. And Joey, to hit on a point you had made earlier, there have been so many times I have been told to stay in my lane, to, so many times I've not been called on in the room. And not to say that always happens, but, having those experiences of being the other and being told that my opinions were not as important, really made me want to highlight everyone else's opinions on our team, because I do not, I don't have all the answers, and I don't expect you all to think that I do have all the answers, because sometimes you have the answer. Sometimes it comes from within you. And yeah, I'm there to soundboard off of, I'm the supervisor, you're going to run it by me. Yeah, sure. But like, I want you to know that you have it within you too, as from supervisor to staff member. But
Thank
thanks,
you so
Angela.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to add, when that whole thing happened with the funding, Nita took a group of us to the beach. She saw the looks on our faces, and she's like, we're going to the beach. And we went to the beach to just unload. They had swings there. We felt the sand and the sun and the breeze, and we were able to talk about how awful that experience was, and also just be in the presence of each other. I know we're going to ask some open it up for questions, so I do want to get moving to Angela.
Thank you, Joey. Well, while I don't have manager or supervisor experience, I think that I'll build on the experience I had working with Nita. One thing that I believe really changed how I showed up for work in the midst of personal experiences and the professional challenges that we had was that Nita, as a supervisor manager, gave us a space to be our authentic self, meaning that when we weren't feeling okay, it was okay, and when we had our opinions, it was invited. Matter of fact, she had a lot of open-ended questions rather than like leading in a way. It was more like it was well balanced. And I think that created a very supportive environment for me to feel like, okay, there isn't this box I need to be in and to think a certain way. It's more about, hey, this is our goal as a team, but I love to hear like your opinion. And if it doesn't necessarily align, maybe we could like tie it in some way and like mold it into it. So it's very inviting, very accepting. And like Joey had said, when we were going through the funding experience, after the initial meeting, Nita had messaged all of us saying, I know you guys must be feeling a lot. You could lean on me, basically. You can lean on me personally, and we could also make time as a group to connect. So it was a lot of being human. It was a lot of open-ended questions. It was a lot of me feeling like I could show up as myself and not just be an employee. It was Angela's strengths showing up, Angela's um, maybe my weaknesses being strengthened as well. It was a lot of, yeah, I think that it was a great balance of her heart and her mind, along with her strengths as a manager that helped create a supportive, resilient environment.
Thank you again to you, Angela and Nita. Yes, and all of the folks in the chat sharing and connecting. I love it. And it goes beyond the individual again. It's teams, communities, organizations on building that together. So I do want to ask if there are any questions or comments folks would like to share.
I really quickly, Joey, I know that you have also had experience in managing a peer, respite program. So I wanted to know if you could share with us your experience for that last question of what would you say would help create a supportive and more resilient environment at work?
Oh, wow, that plot twist. The presenters have a question. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. And that's I think looking back, as I think hindsight, retrospective, thinking back, and I think it all boils down to relationships, the one we have with ourselves, the one we have with others, and the relationship we have with our roles. In ECPR, we call that like the hats we wear too, right? Um, just being able to acknowledge that and accept the different emotions, the roller coasters, and knowing who and where to turn to, and be having some courage as well. Having courage to be vulnerable when possible, when we see that we can affect change, especially when we're speaking up as a part of the community or for community. That may be, again, an open-ended question of how can we include more of this value in this program, right? I worked in a program where they weren't traditionally trained as peer supporters. So having knowledge and awareness of the history and of the peer movement, um, you being able to open that question up for a different perspective allowed me to contribute that part to our team. And it was a much younger team as well. So being able to pass on information, knowledge, even motivation to do the work and highlight different values. So we pick up, what would best serve the team anyway. So um, having that respect with each other to value each other's voices. And thank you for that question, Nita. Gail, I know your hand is up. Do you have a question?
The audio sharing might be off still. So if we could get that taken off, we can jump to verbal Q&A, and then if there are questions in the chat as well, we can call those out too.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you, ladies. Wow, just beautiful sharing, again, highlighting our vulnerabilities. And, it's okay to, basically be vulnerable as we learn and grow, because that's been my mode for quite a while. And I'm now I just wanted to share as a top leading California State certified peer specialist, the first peer hired in LA County at a directly operated clinic. I'm now serving as a elder representing all tribes nationwide, including Canada today, as my great grandfather was Chief Black Bear from South Carolina and served during the Civil War and made captain as 100% Cherokee. And I've been invited as of yesterday to do a video, which I'm excited to move forward, representing the indigenous first property owners of this land. And I do want to acknowledge all tribes, as we are now 4% as far as population here. We've lost quite a few tribes along with tribe members, and I do get welled up. I just want to point out that your stories are not finished, Nita and Angela. You two beautiful ladies, embrace yourselves. My gosh, you're the full package. You don't have nothing to lose but to learn to continue to fill up your personal self-care cups. And that has now become my hot topic and specialty. And yes, we cannot fill our personal self-care cups up because it's impossible. We can always add new things, right? There used to be a saying, and Joanna, I adore the ground you walk on. I missed you at the last Salt 8 meeting. I was so expecting you there. And I'm so happy today when I saw you three beautiful ladies advertising this particular meeting. I'm just really honored, to say the least. It's my privilege to be here today with you. And key is socializing. Socialization, isolation was a big part of my life. Moving forward, as I do represent indigenous to this land, the actual First Natives and property owners, just to point out, I don't use the word native very often. I'm actually working with the Hill Connection to get that eliminated, because if you're Indian, you're from India. If you're indigenous, you're from a tribe here, indigenous to this land. And if you're Mexican, chances are 65 to 90% of all Mexicans, Latinos, are indigenous to this land. And I am now a grandmother of 11 grandchildren, and I have 2 great-grandchildren. I'm the oldest community health worker in all of LA County, and I'm blessed to be of service and so grateful to each one of you. Nita, God, may my Heavenly Father bless you, and I know that you're in His hands. And I do believe your dad is one of many supporters. So please stay mindful and embrace his spirit, because he is with you. And Angela, I just want to know, when are you going to the Met Ball? Because you are just stellar, just gorgeous. Joanna, thank you. So I appreciate you including me. And for everyone on here, we are in this to win it. And it is none of us without all of us. And that means inclusivity. And I was the first one to introduce that word to Wikipedia. I announced that back in 2020 to the medical director back then. It was Dr. John Sharon. And so now it's an actual word in Wikipedia. So I'm going to write to them and get credit for that word. Inclusivity means it was based on a law, ladies and gentlemen, in 1992, that all people handicapped or disabled could be included, whether it was local, state, county, federal, doesn't matter. We have rights. And stigma is not a part of my life today. I am a warrior and I will kill anybody by stepping on their toes. I don't mean that literally, but I will step on toes when it comes to promoting anything that does not include everyone. I don't care what nationality, where you come from. And this is a land of immigrants. And as one, as an elder, it is my respectful honor to highlight inclusivity today. This is one world, one planet, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you to have included me.
Thank you so much, Gail. Really powerful words. And yeah, I'm honored to be a part of, communities where your work is well known and very much appreciated. So thank you again. And there's so many who paved the path, and we continue to work at it, right? I do want to share their contact information. So a few couple of slides so that folks can get their information. This is Angela and Nita's email addresses if you're interested in learning more about the community resiliency model trainings or other trainings, or even just to connect as peers, right? The contact info is there. And we want to thank the National Empowerment Center for hosting this webinar and SAMHSA through their grant, having this conversation with us today. And this is just one of many beginnings of those conversations to uplift resiliency, increase that within peer support settings and within our families, within our communities. So thank you, everyone. Again, do we have any other comments or questions? We have a couple of more minutes. And while you are doing that, I also want to highlight, if you have any further questions, you can email info4@power2u at power2u.org. Sorry, there's a typo there. It's power2u.org. Judy will type it in the chat. And we do have a new training through the National Empowerment Center. We want to advertise, encourage you to connect. It's occupational resiliency and peer support. And it touches on the principles of peer support, both as an intentional leadership practice, including self-leadership, and as a guide for sustaining resilience. The engagement with trainers and other participants also offers live interaction to tap into key practices in peer support for individual and collective visioning and embodiment of resilience in the workplace. Topics covered include dialogue around intentionality, feeling safe at work, needs and feelings, leadership, rest, and communication. And this will be an asynchronous training. Again, thank you all for participating and being here with us. Nita and Angela, if you have any final words you want to share, feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to both Joey and Angela, not only for our work together in the past in our peer support program, but your continued work in the mental health field, because your perspectives, your personalities, who you are, is so vital to the important work that gets done in the communities, and for keeping our members well. And thank you also to the National Empowerment Center, to Mo and Judine. Really appreciate all your support today. And thank you everyone for coming out from all over. We saw people from all over in the chat, all different countries. So thank you so much for showing up, for showing support. Oh, and thank you, Oryx, also. Thanks everyone for showing support and your involvement in today's webinar. Angela?
Yes, thank you, everybody. I thank you, National Empowerment Center. Thank you, Nita. Thank you, Joey. I loved how everybody just showed up today. I think one takeaway that I had amongst many is that everybody here shows up for themselves and knows how important and how how important it is to be human and experience the sensations that we have. So I encourage you guys to continue that. And I appreciate everything that you guys do. It goes above and beyond, and we all appreciate it. So thank you all for showing up today.
Joey, I think that's it for us. Back to you.
Thank you. Yes, and just a reminder, this recording will be at powertu.org, NEC's website, as well as the YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.